Hello, and welcome to the Pride of the College, a celebration of the alumni, students, and faculty of Case Western Reserve University's College of Arts and Sciences. My name is Brian Brown, and I am delighted to host today's event. I have the privilege of serving as Senior Director of Alumni Engagement and Stewardship for the college, which I'm also proud to claim as my alma mater. I'm excited to be joined today by the college's new dean and recent Cleveland transplant, Joy Ward, who I will introduce in a minute. Over the next few minutes, we plan to highlight points of pride within the College of Arts and Sciences. We will announce and celebrate our Distinguished Alumni Award winners. Dean Ward and I will have a conversation about what brought her to the college and what she's seen in her first few months and what she sees ahead for it. Then we will hear from a few faculty members who will speak to the college's strength and the future opportunities that lie ahead. I am pleased now to introduce Joy Ward, Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. Dean Ward came to Case Western Reserve on July 1st from the University of Kansas, her home of 17 years. A prolific researcher recognized nationally and internationally by her peers, federal funding agencies, and even through a 2010 award presented at the White House, Dean Ward joins us after most recently serving as Associate Dean for Research at KU for the last 3 years. We'll talk more about her accomplished career after we present our Distinguished Alumni Awards. It's now my pleasure to welcome to the program Dean Ward.
Thank you, Brian, for that wonderful introduction. The College of Arts and Sciences at Case Western Reserve University is now my home, and I'm absolutely delighted to join you for this annual homecoming tradition. Like all of you, I am disappointed this year that we won't be gathering in person in Cleveland. However, I want you to know that the college and university have worked to create a virtual experience that showcases and celebrates the achievements of our alumni, students, faculty, and staff. I am grateful, however, that in a year defined by challenge, that we can take a moment to celebrate the careers and lives of some of our alumni. I have had the privilege of connecting with a number of our award winners early on in my tenure as dean, and I'm sure our audience will find them as impressive as I did. Each year, the College of Arts and Sciences honors alumni who have made exceptional contributions to their fields and to the lives of others. The awards we present today recognize graduates of the college and its predecessor schools. With these awards, we celebrate their achievements, honor a legacy of excellence, and encourage and inspire future alumni. This year, we are pleased to present awards to a group of esteemed alumni. Our first award is the College of Arts and Sciences Distinguished Young Alumni of the Year Award. This award recognizes alumni who are graduates of the last decade who are age 40 or younger with outstanding achievements and accomplishments early in their careers. I am pleased to present the 2020 Distinguished Young Alumni Award to Aishwarya Arjunan, a graduate of the class of 2010. Brian, could you tell us a little bit more about Aishwarya?
Aishwarya worked in a genetics lab at the Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine while pursuing a Bachelor of Science degree in biology while she was on campus. She went on to earn a Master of Science in Genetic Counseling, a Master of Public Health and Human Genetics, and a Certificate in Global Health at the University of Pittsburgh Graduate School of Public Health. Earlier in her career, Aishwarya provided genetic counseling to couples and families while engaging in research and education about genetic diseases. After completing an internship at Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, she relocated to Chicago, where she divided her time between the Norton and Elaine Sarnoff Center for Jewish Genetics and the Ann and Robert H. Lurie Children's Hospital. Today, she is a clinical product specialist at Myriad Women's Health, where she manages all clinical aspects, including research, marketing, and results reporting, of a genetic test called Foresight Carrier Screen. The test helps couples identify when they are at elevated risk of passing inherited disorders onto their children. A past president of the Illinois Society of Genetic Professionals, Aishwarya received the 2018 New Leader Award from the National Society of Genetic Counselors and went on to co-chair the organization's Diversity and Inclusion Task Force. She's a core faculty member in the Northwestern University Genetic Counseling Program, where she serves on the admissions committee and is a thesis advisor. Ever since she graduated from Case Western Reserve, Aishwarya has been an alumni admission ambassador, assisting the university in its outreach to prospective students. She also belongs to the Alumni Association's Board of Directors and chaired its governance committee.
Congratulations, Aishwarya. We are honored to celebrate you this year as the college's outstanding young alumna, and we look forward to seeing where your trailblazing career takes you in the years to come. and we appreciate your impressive commitment to serving Case Western Reserve. Next, we present the College of Arts and Sciences Distinguished Service Alumni of the Year Award. This award recognizes dedicated alumni who exhibit outstanding volunteer service to the community since graduation and for professional excellence in their career. Before the pandemic forced us to move homecoming and reunion to a virtual celebration, we were looking forward to a unique celebration of the class of 1970's 50th reunion, a class truly unlike any other in the history of the college. As we reviewed nominations and thought about how profoundly this class has impacted the university and the world, we decided to celebrate them together, presenting the Service Award to the class of 1970. Brian, would you tell us a little bit more about what makes this class so special?
Members of the class of 1970 attended the university during a time of political and social upheaval and at a formative period in the history of Case Western Reserve. Many of them participated in the anti-war and civil rights movements. They were among the founders of campus organizations that endure to this day, including what we now call the Undergraduate Student Government and the Observer. After they graduated, they went out into the world as some of the university's most civically engaged alumni. Through public service, advocacy, and activism, members of the class of 1970 have advanced a variety of causes, from combating domestic violence in the United States to improving conditions for textile workers around the globe. At the same time, they have been exceptionally generous in their service and support for Case Western Reserve. 50 years after their graduation, the college honors them for all they have done and continue to do to shape the university, their communities, and their society.
Thank you, Brian. Our congratulations again to the class of 1970. We look forward to welcoming you back to your 51st reunion in 2021. I can't wait to meet all of you personally. For members of the class of 1970 who are with us tonight, I encourage you to reach out to a classmate to make sure they've heard this news and to share some memories of your time on campus. Next, we present the College of Arts and Sciences Distinguished Graduate Alumni of the Year Award, the highest honor bestowed upon an alumnus or alumna with a graduate degree from the College of Arts and Sciences or its predecessor schools. It recognizes alumni who have distinguished themselves in their professions or through community service and have made significant contributions through demonstrated leadership. I am pleased to present the 2020 Distinguished Graduate Alumni Award to Tony Champ, a graduate of the class of 1963 with a doctorate in chemistry. Congratulations, Tony. Brian, please tell us more.
Tony Champ earned his doctorate in chemistry from Case Institute of Technology and immediately entered the chemical industry as a scientist at Celanese Corporation, then one of the country's major producers of polyester fiber. After rising through a series of research positions, he became involved in other aspects of Celanese's operations. He managed 2 production plants and was eventually named vice president of manufacturing. He ventured into the textile fibers marketing and the commercialization of new technology. Then, in 1987, Tony became president and CEO of Fiber Industries, an independent company that he and other investors had formed through a leveraged buyout of Celanese's synthetic fiber operations. 2 years later, after the firm was sold to Wellman Industries, he retired, but he quickly found a new outlet for his entrepreneurial energies. Today, Tony and his wife Edie are the proprietors of Whitehall Vineyards, a working winery in Virginia's Blue Ridge Mountains. They started out in 1992 with 6 acres. Today, they have more than 48 acres under cultivation. In a 2008 ArtSci magazine interview, he mentioned that although he relied on a professional winemaker's expertise, he liked to keep up with the latest in viticultural research. "It keeps the winemaker from snowing me," he explained with a smile. "I can outdazzle him with chemistry." An emeritus trustee of Case Western Reserve University, Tony established a graduate fellowship fund in 2008 in memory of Professor J. Reed Shelton, his doctoral advisor, and a leading rubber chemistry researcher. "He was a consultant for industry, so I think he taught me some practical aspects of business," Tony recalled. "He knew what industry looks for. Results." Congratulations, Tony.
Tony, we are thrilled to honor you today with the Distinguished Graduate Alumnus Award. I imagine your advisor, Professor Shelton, recognized when you were a student the spark that would ignite the success you have enjoyed throughout your life. Congratulations again. Our final award this evening is the College of Arts and Sciences Distinguished Undergraduate Alumni of the Year Award, the highest honor bestowed upon an undergraduate alumnus or alumna of the College of Arts and Sciences or its predecessor schools. It recognizes alumni who have distinguished themselves with distinct achievements in their professions or community service and have made significant contributions through demonstrated leadership. We are pleased this year to present a Distinguished Undergraduate Award to Karen Udelman, a graduate of the Flora Stone Mather College for Women class of 1965 with a degree in Communications Sciences. Brian, please tell us more about Karen.
Karen Udelman has devoted her career to special education and support of the hearing impaired, with a focus on teaching speech to children with profound hearing loss. After graduating from Flora Stone Mather College with her degree in Communication Sciences, Karen earned a master's degree in Education of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing at Columbia University. She then spent 2 years as a Peace Corps volunteer in Brazil, teaching deaf students and adults and training aspiring teachers at speech clinics and schools. Eventually, she returned to Columbia to obtain 2 additional degrees, an EDM in Special Education Instructional Practice and an EDD in Special Education Administration and Supervision. In addition to working directly with children, Karen has contributed to her field as a researcher, an educational consultant, and a university instructor in deaf education and speech-language pathology programs. Among her leadership positions, she was elected to a 2-year term as president of the Alexander Graham Bell Association for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, also known as A.G. Bell. She is a former board member for A.G. Bell and Cleveland Hearing and Speech Center, and she served on the College of Arts and Sciences Visiting Committee. She and her husband, Robert Udelman, himself a 1962 graduate of Adelbert College, now live in Richmond, Massachusetts, where she mentors students at Berkshire Community College and volunteers in the state's Special Education Surrogate Parent Program. Congratulations, Karen.
Karen, we are so incredibly proud to count you among the college's alumni. Congratulations. It has been such a pleasure to know you.
Congratulations again to all of this year's Distinguished Alumni Award winners. The college looks forward to continuing to celebrate you and sharing your stories with our alumni and friends. You truly exemplify the power and impact of a Case Western Reserve education on both those who attend the university and the lives you touch after graduation. Congratulations again to all of our award winners. Now that we've gotten the chance to celebrate and get to know our alumni award winners better, I'd like to shift our conversation to someone else I know the college and its alumni are eager to learn more about, and that's you, Dean Ward. You moved across the country from Kansas to Cleveland to be here as our new dean. What about Case Western Reserve and the college appealed to you on your initial visits?
Thanks for the question. I was really struck by the high quality of the faculty here in the college at Case Western Reserve University and across the entire campus. Our faculty in the college have really achieved amazing things in their research and scholarly work, as well as in their performance, as well as being top instructors in the classroom and also giving to their communities through a number of programs that we offer. I can give you some examples. For example, Alina Gertzman has received a Guggenheim Fellowship recently, and these are one of the top awards in the country for scholarship. And so we're really proud of that honor. And also Maggie Popkin received a Rome Prize since I began my role as dean here, and Halal Chiel received an $8 million award from the National Science Foundation for Neurobiology. And this was a collaboration with the School of Engineering. So we're really beginning to grow these interdisciplinary collaborations, which are so key for innovation. And then the second reason is that this is an arts and sciences college, and I'm really invested in that rich array of having different disciplines present all together in one college. And I think this is key and one of the best ways to educate students. So when students are exposed to the arts, the sciences, and the humanities, they really learn how to ask the right questions. They learn how to have a variety of backgrounds and opinions in the way that they think. It allows them to communicate more effectively and really be more career ready if they're exposed to these different disciplines and different ways of thinking. So I was really excited about being in a College of Arts and Sciences for that reason. Also, one of the key areas that wanted me to come here was the great opportunity for collaboration, both across the college and allowing our faculty and our students to collaborate across the campus. And then in addition to that, we have great partners in the community like the Cleveland Institute of Art, the Cleveland Institute of Music, and many other areas such as the Playhouse and other entities in our community that really supply a rich cultural and intellectual experience for our students and our faculty. And so, beginning with the fact that we have really high esteemed faculty here, we have students that are excited about the work they do and are learning in highly rich scholarly environments, as well as having wonderful partners and collaborators. Those were the main reasons I wanted to be here.
You've been in this role for about 90 days now. When have you felt most excited about the college and its future?
I really enjoy seeing our students thrive here in the college. I enjoy seeing them take off as they get into the classroom, even under the COVID situation. Our students have been really engaged in the learning environment this semester. I'm also excited to see when they reach the top level. For example, we had 3 Barry Goldwater Fellows this year. That is an outstanding achievement among our students. So seeing them learning, seeing them thriving and collaborating with each other is really some of the highlights of my time here. I have also really been struck with how committed our alumni are to supporting us in the college. They have recognized that one of the most wonderful ways to give to the college is to support that next generation of leaders and innovators as they move through the university and then out into the world to achieve great things. And so I'm indebted to their sense of supporting our very excited students that are moving into the world and helping this next generation along. And so their support, their interest in what we do in the college have been some major highlights for me.
Thank you, Dean Ward. Were there particular aspects of the way the college and university responded to the global pandemic this summer and fall that stand out to you?
Yes, this was done very carefully here at the university. So as I was beginning, and I was actually starting to attend meetings before my actual tenure began on July 1st, I was struck by the fact that the whole administrative community of the university got together several times a week to talk about how we may best protect the members of our campus community, including our students as they were coming back onto campus months from that time. We worked together as a group every week, and we were actually learning from, for example, Dr. Sarah Lee, who was reading the primary literature on how to best protect our members of our community from COVID. And so we were really learning about the most up-to-date research and how to put in place practices and policies that would protect our campus. And I believe that has contributed to us faring quite well as the semester began. And so I'm really proud that the administrative community and our faculty were able to work together to really develop a protocol to protect our campus. I've also been really struck by how hard our faculty have worked and how effective they've been at allowing students to have opportunities to have in-person experiences, and in cases when they had to be far away, to provide a really one-on-one interaction where students were actually learning by doing, sometimes by actually doing experiments in their own homes that they could report on as they were learning. This was one example that we had in physics. And so I really have to give our faculty tremendous credit for the wonderful innovations that they've come up with to actually help students learn in hands-on ways and in-person ways, even during this COVID scenario. And so I'm really indebted to the hard work of the college in working to supply our students with the highest quality environment.
A focus on diversity is particularly prominent this year, especially after the death of George Floyd and other tragic events this summer. How did the college address those issues this fall?
Yes, indeed. Those events were certainly tragic, and we're doing a number of things in the college to fight that, with the awareness that there is systemic racism, and our students need to learn that this exists and how to approach that. So there's a number of things we're doing. We're really beginning to build the African and African American Studies minor in the college. We're looking forward to growing the number of students enrolled in that minor that allows for an understanding of the cultural, historical, and other perspectives on African and African American issues in the United States and internationally. In addition to that, I've begun a new requirement, and this is a diversity statement for all candidates that are applying for faculty positions in the college. And in that statement, candidates will discuss how they've contributed to enhancing diversity and inclusivity in their past roles, or how they have envisioned that would be important in a future role at Case Western Reserve University. So we're very excited about adding that component to the materials that we look at as we consider faculty in the college. And then in addition to that, I think that one of the key roles that we play in the college is to educate students on social justice and racial justice. And we offer many dozens of courses focusing on these areas that help to educate students about the history, the political, the cultural, and other background issues that pertain to social and racial justice. And then in addition to that, we're extending those course offerings through a program developed by Provost Vinson. And in that program, our students can take courses in social and racial justice in our peer institutions, and the students in those institutions can take our courses. And this really contributes to having a richer array of opportunities to learn more about these issues in our country. And so we feel that it is critical that we educate students on these areas as they go through their degrees.
Thank you, Dean Ward. As a faculty member, you've mentored more than 50 undergraduate students in your labs, many who have gone on to lead research labs of their own. What are some of the key moments that you remember from those experiences? And what successes from your days as a faculty member do you hope to help the college's faculty implement?
Oh, thanks. It's a wonderful opportunity to be able to work with students in the lab. And basically, when we have students come in as first-year students, they sometimes have very low levels of experience in a biology lab, for example, and many of the other labs and scholarly areas that we have in the college. And by the time they graduate, they can be award-winning scientists that can hold their own in the lab, doing lab procedures and lab work. They can go to a national meeting and talk about their results and communicate those effectively. And they can sit in a room full of other scholars and really talk and discuss these issues in science, in my field, for example. And this is true in the arts and the humanities and the sciences across the college in other instances. And so I can remember one of the neat stories when I was at the University of Kansas is I had this wonderful undergraduate who I met as a high school student. And she really wanted to study whale biology. That was her passion. But she had been told by many other faculty that there were way too many whale biologists in the world, and it was a challenging role to get a job in later in life. And I said to this student, and her name is Jenny Stern, she's now at the University of Washington, I said, you will become a whale biologist if that's what you really want to do. We will see to it. And as she worked in my lab on plants, of all things, she built her expertise in biology, and then gradually transitioned to a lab focused more on marine life. And she had published about 3 papers in science journals by the time she had graduated as an undergraduate. And now today she's at the University of Washington, and she has a full PhD scholarship to do nothing other than whale biology and to study other marine life in polar regions. And so that's my story from the past of how a student can have a dream about something they want to do. And even when everyone tells them, well, there's too many people that do that, or that's too hard or too challenging, or you won't make enough money in that field, when often that's not the case, my advice is to go for your passions and to really do what you're excited about. And really, students can accomplish anything they want if they have the passion to do so. And so that's something that I really enjoy seeing among our students. And I can really pass those lessons on to our faculty to let them know that it is really important to engage students in research and in other scholarly works. And many of our faculty in the college, unbeknownst to most people, spend hours and hours a week training students side by side. And these are hours that are outside of the classroom and outside of their other research components of their position, but are all done to help mentor students and to move them into the next generation of leadership in their disciplines. And so we really want to thank those faculty that take that extra time to mentor our students and to help lead them into careers and help them build networks for their success.
Dean Ward, what do you see as the biggest opportunities for the college this year? How can the college best seize them?
That's a critical question to be asking at this time because it really builds on the innovations that we've really learned from COVID. Of course, it's a tragic way and how we had to learn these, but the lessons will remain forever, I believe, in our college. So we've learned how to have alumni, for example, be able to reach more directly out to students and have conversations directly with each other. So for example, we have sophomores and juniors which are not able to be in our dorm community at this time in our home. And so we're trying to reach out to them to help them with career planning in the future. And one of the programs that I began was to have our alumni reach directly out to our students to talk about how their careers developed, how at times one may not be successful at every step of the way, and that by having setbacks, one can really grow and learn how to overcome adversity and to gain more grit as they go through life. And so these kinds of experiences that our alumni have had are something that should be shared with our students so that they know these things in advance. And so that's one area that I've been working on, to have one-on-one interactions, group interactions between our alumni and our students to really talk about what life is really like and how a career really is shaped. In addition to that, I'm finding new innovative ways to have our alumni be able to engage more in having students participate in that research and in that scholarly enterprise that I mentioned, and thinking about the ideas of having alumni really support projects that students could do to help solve societal challenges or to help overcome disease or to work on interdisciplinary work in the performance arts or the social sciences to help children, for example. And so there are opportunities as we move forward for alumni to support this process of building and bringing up our next generation as they work side by side with our top faculty. And so I'm really working to energize this engagement and this interaction between alumni, faculty, and students and staff, and to really help bring us more together to accomplish even more than we have to date. And so I'm really excited about those opportunities to learn more in the college as I grow in my role and to reach out to more alumni as we work together to bring up that next generation.
Thank you, Dean Ward. I appreciate you making time today to share these insights with our alumni and College of Arts and Sciences community. Now, we're going to take a few moments to hear from some of our faculty members.
That's right, Brian. I am pleased to introduce Professors Noel Volz of the History Department, Hillel Cheel of the Biology Department, and Maggie Popkin of the Art History Department to share more about their research and their great work happening here in the college.
My name is Dr. Hillel Cheel, and I'm a professor in the Department of Biology with secondary appointments in the departments of neuroscience and biomedical engineering. I'm delighted to tell you about myself and my research. When I was 6, I told my parents that I was going to be a scientist. When I was 11 years old, I took apart a mechanical clock that wasn't working. My mom did not like me to take things apart, but I wanted to understand how things worked. After I had all the gears in the clock face and the mainspring spread out on the bedspread, I realized I had better make sure to put the clock back together again. Recoiling the mainspring wasn't easy, and meshing the gears together correctly was hard, but everything was finally back in place. I wound up the clock, and it worked. This gave me enormous pleasure, and it taught me that I not only liked taking things apart, but putting them back together again. As I studied to become a scientist, I realized that I wanted to understand how the brain works. How are we able to be conscious of ourselves, to solve mathematical problems, to write poetry, or to fall in love? Studying the human brain is very hard. It has about 10 billion nerve cells and trillions of connections. Since I wanted to understand how the parts, the neurons, allow the whole brain to work, I needed to study an animal with fewer neurons. What behavior could be studied in animals that would help us understand our own brains? Animals need to be able to survive and leave offspring in complicated, changing environments. So do we. These behaviors, adaptive behaviors, are behaviors that we share with animals. For example, as we walk on the sidewalk on a crisp, sunny autumn day, we can admire the changing colors of the leaves without paying attention to each step we take. But on a winter's day, When the sidewalk is covered with snow and ice, we need to focus all of our attention on each step we take so that we don't slip and fall. So walking is an adaptive behavior that we usually take for granted. But when we have to focus on each step, we suddenly realize that it's actually very complicated. Similarly, when we sit down to eat a meal, we usually don't think too much about the steak or mashed potatoes we're about to eat. But if the steak is much tougher than we expect, or the mashed potatoes are lumpy and hard, we have to adjust to these unexpected changes. If we don't coordinate our chewing just right, we bite our tongues or our cheek. Once again, feeding is an adaptive behavior that we take for granted, but it is actually complicated. Animals need to get around and to feed to survive. And so I have chosen to study how adaptive behavior works by focusing on feeding in an animal with a much simpler nervous system, the giant sea slug, Aplysia californica. Aplysia has only about 20,000 neurons in its entire nervous system, and only about 2,000 control its feeding behavior. These are many fewer than in our brains. In Aplysia, neurons can be identified as individuals. As you look at the brain in different slugs, a neuron will have a similar location, will get messages from one particular group of neurons and send messages to another particular group of neurons and have its own special pattern of activity. So we can give neurons names, not George or Alice, but names like B3 or B4. This lets us work out the neural circuit for feeding. It also allows us to watch as the slug tries to pull in a tough piece of seaweed and see how neural activity changes. So we can take apart the system and see how it works at the level of the neurons and the muscles that control feeding. How do we put the pieces back together? One way is to create a computer model. Put together neural circuits and muscle models and see if the model captures key aspects of the original behavior. In collaboration with my colleague, Dr. Peter Thomas, a professor in the Department of Mathematics, Applied Mathematics, and Statistics, we have studied a feeding model. We found that when you challenge the model with an unexpected change in how hard it has to pull on the food, it pulls on the food more strongly and for a longer time. It shows some of the robustness and flexibility we see in the animal. The power of a computer model is that it can be applied to understanding many other problems. Dr. Thomas is applying some of the ideas we learned from slug feeding to understanding models of human breathing, how we adjust our breathing when we cough or gasp for breath. Another powerful aspect of a model is that it can be used to create new artificial devices. I collaborate with colleagues in the Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, Drs. Roger Quinn and Katie Del Torio, to use the ideas we've learned from studying the neural circuitry and musculature of slug feeding to create robots with soft bodies and control circuitry that allow them to show some of the same flexibility and robustness of biological animals. Robots that could crawl through water pipes to detect and fix leaks, or, on a much smaller scale, through blood vessels in the body to detect plaque and insert stents, could have a broad impact on society. So, you see that foundational or basic research can provide guidance to help solve many practical problems. One of the great pleasures of being at Case Western Reserve University is the chance to work with outstanding colleagues. Another great pleasure is working with our exceptional students. Since I love research, I try to inspire my students with that love as well. Rather than lecturing to them, I try to create courses in which they can work with me to understand the nervous system and models of biological systems. The courses attract students from many majors, ranging from biology to physics to engineering to mathematics. The courses allow students to discover the beauty of biological systems, the power of mathematical thinking to gain insights into how a biological system works, and the value of working in teams with other students to figure things out. Perhaps the greatest pleasure of being a teacher is seeing understanding dawn in a student's eyes, and then to watch over the years as they themselves develop into colleagues from whom I can also learn. Thank you for your time and attention.
Hi, everybody. It is such an honor to be here today, and thank you, Dean Ward, for your introduction. My name is Dr. Noelle Volz, and I am one of the newest members of our CASE community here. I have just joined the History Department as of July 1st, and I am the new African-American historian here who's going to be kind of doing research and teaching in the area, particularly of early African-American history, but also teaching courses on modern African-American history as well. So it is a joy and a privilege for me to be here with you all today. And I'm so excited to share a little bit about the work that I do with you all. So hello to the CASE community. Hello to you and to you all. Let's get started. So I'm a historian, and I know that at Case Western, so many of us are actually in the sciences, but as historians, we do our own version of scholarship and research that involves what we call primary sources or original documents that were created during a historical moment, during a time period in which a historical moment is taking place. And so I study historical documents. In my case in particular, I study a lot of court cases to give me insight into the lives of a population known as the free women of color in antebellum Louisiana. So antebellum meaning pre-Civil War. So in order to tell you guys a little bit about this population, I thought I would open with a story. And it is a short narrative chunk, quote actually, that comes from a travel narrative by a free woman of color, written by a free woman of color, published in 1859. The free woman of color was Eliza Potter, and she was a hairdresser who traveled throughout the South in the 1840s and 50s. So in her narrative, she actually writes this, quote, "The colored lady who kept the house was very beautiful and very wealthy. She owned a great deal of property and many slaves, and kept 2 houses more like the elegant mansions of the nobility than anything else. She inherited this property by her husband and master. He emancipated her. He made all over to her, property, money, and shares. A short time after he died, leaving her in possession of all of his wealth. Several gentlemen were going to see her at one time after this man's death. And one of them was a gentleman named Monsieur B, and she leaves the names out to probably keep some anonymity to the story. They made proposals to her, not exactly of matrimony, but by them considered in the same holy light as lawful marriage. She flattered Monsieur B for some time, making him believe that she would take him for her lawful plaisir. But when the evening came on that he looked for the fulfillment of her promise, she deceived him and took another. He went home and blew his brains out right on his father's house, in his father's house. Such occurrences as these are frequent. I could find neither the paper nor the time to tell you half of such things as come under my notice." Wow. So that quote is dramatic, right? It ends in this terrible, what sounds like a suicide scene. But this little excerpt from this narrative by Eliza Potter is fascinating because it illuminates the world of antebellum Louisiana's free women of color. And this was a population, not all of them, but a population of women of African descent who are oftentimes mixed race, who occupied a sort of middle tier in Louisiana society. They weren't exactly free because they were African or of African descent, but they also were not slaves. And so this was a population that I became fascinated with actually when I was an undergraduate at Ohio State University. I began this project as a sophomore in undergrad, and I just kept studying it, and I dug and dug and dug, and it became my honors thesis in undergrad. It became my dissertation basis as I went ahead and continued on and earned my PhD. And now it is the beginning, and it is really the focus of my book project, my book manuscript, which is under contract with the University of Illinois Press. The book is entitled "The Sword in Her Hands: Louisiana's Free Women of Color and Their Sexual Negotiation for Freedom." And so as the title of my book suggests, I study the ways in which free women of color use their bodies and use their sexuality as a way to maneuver in antebellum Louisiana society. In particular, these women decided to form intimate and sexual ties with white men in their communities, and they used these connections, these economic and social ties, to gain wealth, to gain access to different social classes, and to basically navigate, right, to gain access to different social worlds and racial worlds. And they were able to use these relationships to really carve out a space for themselves in what really was an oppressive Southern slave society in many ways. campus. So I went on the search, right, starting in undergrad and continuing through my grad program, and even today, I went on a hunt to uncover the tales and the stories of these women, the women that were encountered in this original narrative piece by Eliza Potter. And immediately I started thinking, where could I find the sources by these women, things that were written about these women, by these women? And the one place that I very quickly found as a wonderful site, a source base that is sort of the crux and the basis of my own work is in Louisiana court records. So what does that mean for you guys? Well, as a historian, we will go in and we will read tons of documents, manuscript sources that look something like this, in fact. As you can see, it looks like a bunch of chicken scratch, but these are court records. These are the documents that I read that tell me the stories of free women of color. Through court records, we are able to see their maneuverings, their choices, their actions, and their relationships. Now, before I talk any more about the court cases that I explore, one thing that's really important to note is the fact that free women of color are appearing in the Louisiana court system at all. In the antebellum era, throughout most of the United States, it is illegal for Black folk to be able to appear in court, particularly against white people, whether as witnesses or as defendants or as plaintiffs. And so it is really unusual that we see free women of color acting as agents in their own right before the Louisiana Supreme Court. And not just the Supreme Court, the lower courts, all of Louisiana court system. And this is in many ways rooted in the French and Spanish periods under which Louisiana was originally sort of ruled before it becomes the property of the United States in 1803. And so because of these French and Spanish antecedents, free women of color gain access to the courts very early in the colonial history of Louisiana, and they're able to maintain that access throughout the 19th century. And it's that access that then they are able to use to their advantage. And so with that in mind, I thought I would bring you into just one example of the stories that I explore in my work. And it's actually one of my favorite stories of a free woman of color named Cora Lalonde. So in 1847, Cora Lalonde married a Frenchman named Raymond Domecq, and they were married in the Annunciation Church in New Orleans. And at the time of their marriage, actually, Cora Lalonde, who was incredibly fair-skinned according to the court records, she was actually passing for white. So when they got married, Domecq had no idea that she was Black. He thought she was white, and they were married as a white couple before the church. And in order to make this make sense, according to Louisiana's Civil Code, particularly Article 95 of the Louisiana Civil Code, interracial marriage is banned in the state, right? And so as a result, there is no way that a white person could marry either a slave or a free person of color, basically anybody of African descent. It bans miscegenation is the term that scholars more recently use. And so as such, Cora Lalonde decides to pass for white, and she marries Domecq. Well, their relationship continues, and a few years later, he finds out the mystery of her birth. And horrified, I am sure, due to his own propriety and issues of racism in the area and patriarchy in the area, he takes out an advertisement in the New Orleans Bee, the New Orleans newspaper, and he says, "I had no idea that this woman was Black. I did not realize the mystery of her birth, and as such, she has no right to claim the name of Madame Domecq," right? And with that, the couple breaks up because there's basically no other way that you could end a relationship after taking out a newspaper advertisement. Those are fighting words. So the relationship ends and the couple goes their separate ways. Well, shortly thereafter, Cora Lalonde actually comes into some money from another white man who she's in a sexual relationship with. And as a part of this succession, she is going to set to inherit some funds. And so everything seems to be moving along. She's received some money as a part of this man's estate, a little over $1,000. And guess who pops back on the scene? None other than her previous husband, Mr. Domecq, right? Raymond Domecq. He pops back on the scene and he says, no, Cora Lalonde should never have rights to that money because he is a husband. And as the husband in a patriarchal system, he is the head of what they call their matrimonial community, the head of the household. And being the head of the household, he should retain control of this money. And so he goes to court and pushes for rights to gain this money that would have belonged to Cora Lalonde. And so you would think that as a Black woman, Cora Lalonde would lose her case, right? Why would she, as a Black woman in the context of the slave South, have any defense? Why wouldn't the court just give this money to Ramon Domecq? Well, this is where it gets really fascinating. We get to see the way in which Cora Lalonde plays the system to her advantage. They go to court, and this court case actually makes it all the way up to the Louisiana Supreme Court level. And in the court record, right, Lalonde comes forward, and she could present any number of defenses for why she should get to hold on to this money. Sometimes free women of color would present the defense that, in fact, the money was rightfully theirs because they earned it through work, that this was their hard-earned money. Sometimes they would say that this is familial money that they had received, and thus it was rightfully theirs. But Cora Lalonde decides to take another approach. Instead of bringing forth witnesses to prove her industriousness, her hard work, she just brings forth one witness after another who says she's Black. And in fact, that is what she says. She brings forth one witness after another. They're like, yeah, I know her mom. Yeah, she's a woman of color. Yeah, oh, I know her mom. She was a Black woman. Yeah, she's Black. And Cora Lalonde then goes before the court and says, well, I'm a Black woman, and Domecq is a French man. And frankly, according to the laws of Louisiana, Article 95, there's no way that we are legally married. So there's no way that he has a right to my money. And the court says, no, that actually makes sense, right? And so Lalonde is able to keep hold of her money, and not only keep hold of her money, but then the Supreme Court also allows her to hold on to her money as well. I love this case for a number of reasons. First, we see that Lalonde is strategically manipulating and navigating the racial boundaries of antebellum Louisiana. This idea that race was automatically understood and always defined and so narrowly and strictly is very obviously kind of a little bit hard to understand when you see Cora Lalonde, who first passes for white, then passes for Black. And interestingly, about 10 years after this court case appears, I found her again in Louisiana census records, and she is again passing for white. And she is still using Domecq's last name, despite the fact that he has married a white woman in the community. So I love this story, not only because it shows us about the potential manipulations that free women of color who were light-skinned enough to be able to pass could do to navigate the racial lines that existed in Louisiana, but it also is interesting because it brings up another point about Louisiana's free women of color, and that is the fact that some of them chose to remain single and to take on what was known as the femme sole status, the single woman status, because as single women, they were able to maintain hold of property that if they were married, they would be unable to do. And so for free women of color, for those who were able to partner with white men, on the one hand, it allowed them access potentially to his wealth, to having children who were connected to the white community, but simultaneously, it also allowed them to retain their own rights and their own particular rights to property. And this is incredibly important and just one of the many strategies that free women of color used to navigate antebellum Louisiana society. Now, of course, in my telling this story, this is a beautiful story, right? This is a story where the free woman of color wins. But we need to remember the larger context, right? That this is antebellum Louisiana society, and free women of color would never even had to be in these courts making these kinds of strategic moves and making these defenses if it weren't for the fact that this was a slave system and a racist and patriarchal system, but in which they found themselves, in which they had to sort of create strategies and employ a variety of strategies strategies in order to survive and to thrive. But I think that the thing that my work really does is it centers the ways in which these women of color use and strategize, use the courts, they use their bodies, they use anything at their disposal to be able to navigate society, the society in which they found themselves. So I am so excited to continue to talk more about this with you all and to share more about my work with you all through my book that comes out. Hopefully it will be out in the next year or two, but also in my classes. I will be teaching a number of classes here, including African American history courses, some courses in African American and African studies, and I would love to see any students there in my classes. For any of you who are seniors, who senior citizens who want to take classes, I would love you to be there. It has been a joy and a privilege to meet you all and to share just a little nugget of my work with you. I hope you have a wonderful day. Happy, happy homecoming. Thank you so much for your time. Bye.
I'd like to thank Dean Ward for this invitation to participate in this wonderful event. My name is Maggie Popkin. I'm the Robeson Junior Professor in the Humanities and Associate Professor in the Department of Art History and Art here in the college. I'm an art historian and archaeologist of the ancient Greek and Roman worlds. I'm especially interested in how visual and material culture shape people's memories, both individual and collective, and how that culture impacts the ways we interact with and perceive our world. I'm thrilled to share with you a little bit about my research, and I'd like to focus on two main areas: my archaeological research in the Sanctuary of the Great Gods in Samothrace, Greece, and my art historical research on popular material culture in the Roman Empire. Samothrace is a remote island in the northern Aegean Sea, off the coast of Thrace, and you can see it circled here in the image at your left. The island rises dramatically to the peak of Mount Fangari, where, according to Homer, Poseidon sat and watched the Trojan War unfold on the plains of Troy. As you can see in the photograph here, it is windswept and rugged, beautiful but in some ways harsh, and very isolated. Today, the population of goats on the island dwarfs the human population. Today, the name of Samothrace evokes the island's most famous archaeological find, the spectacular statue of the Winged Victory currently on display in the Louvre in Paris. In antiquity, however, the island's claim to fame was the cult of the Theoi Megaloi, or great gods. The Sanctuary of the Great Gods at Samothrace, which you see here, housed one of the Greco-Roman world's most important and renowned mystery cults. Open to all, regardless of wealth, gender, class, or ethnicity, the Samothracian cult promised salvation at sea and a privileged position in the underworld. The attraction of these promises is very easy to understand, and unsurprisingly, people from around the ancient Mediterranean traveled to Samothrace to seek initiation into the cult of the great gods. Since 1938, American archaeologists have excavated in the Sanctuary of the Great Gods. I first got involved in the American excavations at Samothrace in 2008 as a graduate student at NYU's Institute of Fine Arts, and today I'm proud as a Case Western Reserve faculty member to be a senior member of the team carrying on this long, proud tradition. Our recent work in the sanctuary, which has been supported by, among others, the National Endowment for the Humanities and National Geographic, has focused on the area of the sanctuary where the Winged Victory originally stood. This virtuosic sculpture shows Nike, the Greek goddess of victory, alighting on the prow of a warship. But while the statue itself is the subject of a vast scholarly literature, much less attention has been paid over the century and a half since its discovery to the architectural setting of the Nike on Samothrace. As you can see from this photo on the right, that's in part because not too much remains. However, through cleaning and targeted excavation, along with deep dives into legacy data, we are reconstructing the original context of the Nike. So here you see a few photographs of students excavating some of the monuments that surrounded and thus provided that context for the Nike in antiquity. On the left, the ancient theater, and at right, the area of the Stoa. Our excavations and research have allowed us to make digital reconstructions of the sanctuary. The examples you see here show how the Nike dominated some of the sanctuary's largest monuments, including the theater, which you see reconstructed at left, and the Stoa, this long columnar facade at the right. And in the background, of course, you can see the Nike. Our excavations and these resulting models help us understand the relationship between the sanctuary's monuments and how people would have moved through and experienced this extraordinary religious site in antiquity. The other main area of my research right now may seem far removed, geographically and chronologically, from Hellenistic Greece, but it still has to do with how material culture shaped people's experiences, memories, and imaginations, religious or otherwise, in the ancient world. For the past few years, I've been taking a close look at a fascinating category of objects that have been almost entirely overlooked in scholarship on the Roman Empire, namely ancient souvenirs. Now, souvenirs, of course, are ubiquitous today, but they were common too in the Roman world. A Roman visiting the resort town of Baiae on the Bay of Naples could purchase a glass flask engraved with scenes of the city to bring home to Spain, North Africa, or Germany. At Ephesus, in modern Turkey, one could visit the Temple of Artemis, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and leave with a miniature silver replica of the shrine. At Athens, that same person could buy a miniature terracotta version of the famous shield sculpted by Phidias for his ivory and gold statue of Athena in the Parthenon. Fans of gladiatorial combats and chariot races could own oil lamps or drinking cups with their favorite stars, sort of an ancient version of sports merchandise. And enthusiasts of theater could collect sets of actor figurines. Like social media today, these ancient souvenirs offer a unique resource for exploring the experiences, interests, imaginations, and aspirations of people living in the Roman world beyond elite metropolitan male authors and moneyers. Roman souvenirs offer invaluable evidence of what people of widely varying backgrounds around the empire wanted to remember, and how they presented curated images of themselves to others. They demonstrate choices about self-expression that would otherwise be lost to us, and they illuminate ancient perceptions of religion, place, and spectacle that we would miss if we relied solely on literary sources and elite art and architecture. In my book in progress, Mediating Empire, Souvenirs and Society in the Roman World, I make 2 central arguments. One, that souvenirs shaped how Romans remembered and conceived of various people, places, and events in a world where literacy was limited and visual communication was therefore essential. And 2, that they created imagined affinities that allowed diverse and far-flung people to feel connected to others in the Roman Empire. But souvenirs also strengthened local identities, and they could exclude people from participation in the shared cultural community they helped construct, reifying the empire's power to marginalize and objectify certain people. Objects like lamps with famous charioteers like you see here and little glass bottles in the shape of famous statues can seem so ordinary, but they actually speak to the most central concerns of how we think about the Roman Empire, including tensions between cultural cohesion and diversity, collective memory and identities, knowledge construction, and the role of popular material culture in mediating all of those. My work on souvenirs has been recognized by a National Endowment for the Humanities Fellowship and, most recently, by the American Academy in Rome, which has awarded me the 2020-2021 Andrew High School Rome Prize in Ancient Studies. In January, fingers crossed at least, my family and I will be moving to Rome for the spring semester. The American Academy in Rome is one of the world's leading American overseas centers for independent studies and advanced research in the humanities and fine arts. This extraordinary opportunity will give me time to immerse myself in Italy's incomparable museum collections, to explore the country's unique archaeological sites, and most excitingly, to be part of the vibrant community of scholars and artists at the Academy. This is a huge personal honor for me, but I'm also so thrilled, as the first faculty recipient of a Rome Prize from Case Western Reserve, to represent the university and the college on this international stage. And I really look forward to sharing more about my time in Rome and the results of my research there with the Case Western Reserve community. Thank you.
Thank you, Professors Volz, Cheel, and Popkin. My experiences on campus in my first few months as dean have confirmed what I have always admired from afar. This is an incredible community, committed to excellence in teaching, scholarship, and research. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the remainder of this weekend's homecoming programs.